will look good in my trailer.
I'm telling you.
My camping trip.
That's right.
I didn't. I just stole it from Bob.
All right.
Sweet.
No, it's. I hope that you want to take a closer look.
Yeah. Those are actually
Pine needles.
She thought it was marijuana.
We're not advocating for that here at Reno Tahoe.
The greatest cash crop for us.
Yeah. Pine trees and marijuana. Good morning, everybody. It is the prescribed time of 9 a.m. on Thursday, May 24th. I will call to order the Reno Sparks Convention and Visitors Authority regular meeting of Board of Directors. At this time, Mr. Wowo, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, can I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Caroselli? Here. Mr. Dillard?
Here.
Mr. Lawson?
You me?
Yeah.
I can't hear. I'm sorry.
Mr. Lawson?
Here.
Chairman Lucy?
Here.
Mr. Murdoch? Here. Mayor Sheevy? Here. Mr. Sturbins? Here. Mr. Wood? Here. Mr. Wowo? Here.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right. At this time, we are on to public comment. Is there any individuals in the audience that would like to speak under public comment at this time? I don't have any cards signed in. Seeing none, close that. We're going to make a couple of adjustments this morning. There are some individuals here in the room that are trying to make it to the event this morning for the Women of Achievement lunch, and then so we're going to try to move some things out of order. We're going to take the public hearing F2 first, right after the approval of minutes, and then we'll take everything else in order. So looking for a motion this morning to approve the agenda with the changes. I have a motion from Mayor Sheevy, second from Mr. Dillard. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. All right, we are on to item D, approval of minutes of the April 26, 2018 Board of Directors regular meeting. Any changes to the minutes or any discussion? Seeing none, looking for a motion to approve. I have a motion from Mayor Sheevy, second from Mr. Wowo. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. All right, we are on to item F2. This is the public hearing to review and the adoption of the RSCVA 2018-2019 fiscal year budget process. This time we will open the public hearing. Mr. Chisel.
Good morning, Robert Chisel, Director of Finance. For the record, I'm here to present the fiscal year 2018-2019 proposed budget for the Reno Sparks Convention and Visitors Authority. Basically today I'm going to go through the budget process, how the strategic plan plays into that, a brief overview of the budget, and then get into the general fund budget in each of the departments, do a recap of the surcharge fund, that's that tourism surcharge, go into the other remaining funds that the authority has, which is the debt service fund, the insurance fund, and the capital fund. So the budget process, most of you are very familiar with the process, why we prepare a budget. It provides a plan, it establishes our projections and sets our expenditure limitations. But most importantly, it is also required by Nevada revised statutes. So as we go through this, our budget, after we submit the budget and it's adopted here today, we will submit it then to the Department of Taxation for their review and eventual approval. And so as we prepare our budget, one of the things that drives this budget that you see before you today is the strategic plan, which the board adopted originally in June of 2016. So that strategic plan drives the budget development along with department requests, capital improvements, revenue projections, funding requirements. Those things all take part before what you see today in front of you as the proposed budget for the authority. And speaking of the strategic plan, The strategic plan called for a number of financial policies as adopted by this board. And I'm pleased to say that the budget before you today meets all of the strategic plan financial policies. One was to have a general fund reserves at least 10%. This proposed budget has general fund reserves of 14% after taking out for the rainy day fund that's down there on item number 4. So we have, hopefully at the end of June 30th, 2019, at least 14% of reserves in our fund. Capital reserve account, we have approximately $1 million in there. The policies called for reserves up to $1 million. The debt sinking fund, we have also allocated $1.7 million. That is in alignment with the 15% room tax revenues in excess of $22 million that goes to that sinking fund. And with that money, we'll defease the 2011 bonds as we go forward. The rainy day fund, as I mentioned a little second ago, we have set aside approximately $1 million in the general fund for the rainy day. The annual capital funding is $4.1 million. We presented the capital improvement plan to this board in April. And 10% of all room tax collections would be $2.5 million. This is $4.1 million, but as we've discussed, we're kind of playing catch up on a lot of capital funding that we have neglected in the past several years. And finally, Air Service Fund, $1.5 million to support new airlift. In the marketing budget, there is $1.5 million budgeted in there for new airlift. Quick overview of the budget. These are our expenditures. The total for the authority is $53 million for 2018-19. There's a breakdown of the different funds and what the money is going from. If you like to look at spreadsheets, just kind of going through by department what the different budgets were for 18-19, what the outlook is for this fiscal year, so you can kind of compare what it is from this year to next year and the change. And I'm going to go through each of these departments as we go into this presentation, so you'll get a chance to ask questions if you have any questions. And I'll get into more detail. Revenues, as you all know, our revenues come from room tax. That's our biggest collection. 71% of our budget is from room tax, another 10% from surcharge, and then the next biggest is facility revenue. These numbers are consistent with what they have been for the past several years. However, room tax collections continue to go up. Again, just kind of showing where the numbers are and what the difference is. This gives you a historical perspective of room tax collections over the last 10 years. And those of us that have lived through the recession understands how much it feels better to be on the outside of it rather than in the middle of it or on the bottom of it. But just it's always good to remember where you were and where we're going. Room tax, you know, that is our biggest driver. Room tax is depending on where the property is located, there is a different rate and a different recipient of that room tax. And this, I know it's a little complicated, but it is kind of complicated the way the room tax works, and it just breaks out all the different recipients of the room tax. It's important to remember that the authority is a collection agency for other governments. So we collect the $60 million that comes in room tax and surcharge during a fiscal year 18-19, and that's what we project. We keep about 68%. So about 2/3 of it we keep. The rest goes to other local governments and the state of Nevada. In addition to that $41.5 million that we keep, there's about $1.6 million that is going to be remitted to the Incline Village Crystal Bay Visitors Bureau, and that is required by NRS. We're not the ultimate keeper of all the revenue, so we keep a little less than 2/3 of the room tax that we collect in a year. Now just getting into a little bit more of the meat, we break out our expenditures by different categories. One of the things to note here is if you look at other governmental entities, most governmental entities, you're going to see 75 to 80% of expenditures in payroll. We as an agency are about 12%. It's because of our mission is so much more driven by sales and marketing. You'll see that is a very low number compared to other government entities. And next, I'm going to kind of go through each of the departments and the changes that took place. Here is convention sales as a department. You'll see the budget by category. The outlook is what we project fiscal year 17-18, the current year we're in, is, and the amount of the increase or decrease. As you see, one of the things we have done is projected a 15% increase in health insurance. You're going to see that across the board. Part of that is as we are decreasing in the number of staff, where our healthcare costs are going up per individual. So for convention sales, the big change you're seeing in convention sales is we have budgeted $500,000 for booking incentives. That has come from the tourism surcharge money. In the past, when we did booking incentives, we did not budget it. This year, we are actually going to budget it and put it in the budget so that we have the resources available if an event comes up. Tourism sales, that department, there's two big changes there that should be noted. One, this budget is proposing an additional staff member, a tourism sales manager. So you see the increase there in payroll. Also, you'll see an increase in the promotion and advertising category. That is in relation to the contract for PHG. That's for the China Ready contract that was approved by the board. Marketing, you'll see a lot of increases in marketing. Again, this is our primary focus as an authority. You'll see over $800,000 increase in marketing and advertising in there, and then an increase of $1 million for the air service. That's under the promotion and advertising category. So that's why you see the big increase in promotion and advertising. It's related to $830,000 in increased marketing and the increased air service, the airlift. So we're looking forward to increasing our airlift at the Reno Airport. Executive office, the only big change or noted was we did budget for the contracted potential bonus. Board of directors, we have increased for governmental affairs. It is a legislative year coming up, so we are now going to have that cost. We also removed some one-time projects. The Spark sign and the City of Reno sign and the feasibility study were in this year's budget, so that's why you see the decrease. Finance and purchasing, the heartbeat of the organization. There is one request for an additional accounting tech position beginning partway through the year. That is to meet an audit request that we got from our external auditors. We have a very small finance department here, and there's not appropriate separation of duties in our finance department. In addition, there's actuarial studies that are conducted every 3 years for OPEB and workers' comp that need to be accomplished this year. And then we reclassified 2 employees from facilities. Instead of creating another department, we just put them in under finance. They're existing positions. They've just been reallocated into finance, so that's why you see a big increase in payroll. Room tax, these are our room tax auditors. Great team, not much to report there other than it's a flat budget. Human resources, another small team, great team, but we did allocate an additional $60,000 for unemployment expense. As we make some transitions, we're need to make sure we're aware of any potential expenses with unemployment. Information technology, big increase is in software licensing. As you all know, licensing costs have been increasing. And the other thing is we did budget $60,000 for replacement of boardroom equipment. Here in this boardroom, our sound system and our video system is at the end of life, and we've been having some difficulties with it, so we're budgeting $60,000 to replace the equipment you have in front of you today so we could do video conferencing and other things at a better ease. Mail service, pretty flat. You don't, no change. Facilities. What we did here, in the past, each of the facilities were budgeted separately. The Reno Sparks Convention Center, the Livestock Event Center, the Reno Event Center, and the National Bowling Stadium. Here they're lumped all together as SMG starts to take over. Starting June 17th, we're going to transition to SMG. They're going to start taking over the professional management of our facilities. We worked with them on developing this budget based on what they projected the staffing is. All of our employees are projected to carry forward with SMG. So that's all in that budget. One of the things that you will notice, there is a slight increase in the budget overall. And this kind of shows by the facility what the revenues and expenditures are. And one of the things that is changing, there's two big changes that are going on next year that are impacting the facilities budgets. Of course, SMG taking over and doing the professional management. And as we go along, I need to kind of let people know that there may be changes to this budget as SMG gets their feet wet and starts to actually operate the facilities. There may be some changes and adjustments as we go forward. But I think this is a pretty good budget as to what it's going to look like for next year. But you'll notice the Reno Sparks Convention Center, there's increased costs there. A lot of that is driven because of the Safari Club and the requirement for tents outside of those facilities. That's $680,000 just for those two tents and keeping them warm. And then the other item that you see a big change in is in the National Bowling Stadium. Starting in January, the City of Reno is going to start the remodel of the 4th floor, so it's going to go dark. And in this year, we have the women's tournament with USBC. Next year, we're not going to have any tournaments with USBC, and it will be dark for 6 months. So there's some impacts to the revenues, of course, and some of the expenditures. The hope is that we'll be able to keep the Kingpin Club open during that period of time, but there may be periods where that's not going to be feasible. But those are the two major impacts you're seeing in the budget by the individual facilities. Moving on to our last facility, Wildcreek. As you know, the board approved a agreement with Duncan Golf to start taking over the Wildcreek. They took it over as of May 1st. They have transitioned and are actually operating the golf course as we speak. So for next fiscal year, you'll see a lot of changes in the revenues and expenditures. The only revenue you see is we anticipate the $979,000 that was approved in December for the sale of Wildcreek to Washoe County, eventually to the Washoe County School District. We did keep $262,000 in there. That is to pay for the water effluent for through February, not knowing exactly when the transition would take place or the sale would take place. And we also budgeted $60,000 for potential closing costs if there are any. Duncan is running it and keeping the revenue and keeping all the expenses, so you're seeing a big turnaround in the Wildcreek golf course. Finally, contingency, we budget $400,000. We didn't use it this year, but it's still budgeted in there. We're going to budget $400,000 next year, and our anticipation is we hope not to use it next year. Apportionment, again, as I mentioned earlier about the room tax, we have room tax that is collected in Incline Village and Crystal Bay, and that portion of that goes back to the Incline Village Crystal Bay Tourism Board. Finally, on the tourism surcharge, as you know, the surcharge actually started in 2016, and as we went forward, a lot of the expenditures slowly started taking place as we implemented the strategic plan that was adopted by the board. So as we go forward, the surcharge revenue has been increasing. So that has enabled us to increase what we are budgeting for air service and for the booking incentives and for capital. So what you'll see there is about $7.7 million is budgeted for marketing, $5.9 million directly in marketing, $1.5 million in air service lift. And I'd point out, if it is not used this year, it would roll forward into the next year's budget. So it's not like it's intended to go away. It's intended to keep going there as long as we need it. $260,000 for marketing agency fees, $500,000 for sales booking incentives. Again, the same thing as with the airlift. If it is not used this year, it would roll forward into future years. And then $1 million for capital, as we discussed in April's board meeting as part of the capital improvement plan. Next, on to our other funds. We have a debt service fund. As you all know, we have 2 bonds outstanding, a 1999 cab and a 2011 refunding. The 99 cab has only a couple more years on it. Right now, the estimated balance as of June 30th this year will be $105 million. Next year, our debt will be down to $98 million. Again, the big change you're seeing there is in the increase in that sinking fund. Other than that, there's not much change in the debt service. The insurance fund, this is a fund used to account for our health insurance and workers' comp. We pay in for our employees' health insurance. The employees also pay in for their dependent coverages. As you can see, both the revenues and expenditures are going down. That is because as we transitioned a lot of our employees to SMG, we're going down to only 52.5 FTEs with the authority for next year. And then the capital fund, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. We talked about it at the April board meeting. This is as we presented in the capital improvement plan of April, $4.1 million for next year. And that is what I have as far as presentation. I'd be happy to answer any question, but staff recommends holding the public hearing as required by the state and adopt the budget as presented to the board.
Thank you, Mr. Chisholm. Are there any questions for Mr. Chisholm at this time in regards to the budget? Mr. Wowo.
Yeah. First and foremost, thank you, Mr. Chisholm, for the thorough presentation. As I mentioned when we kind of walked through this earlier or last week, would there be a way for us to show an ROI type view where we're showing the rooms generated from the convention center and the bowling stadium against expenditures, so that it's a more, I guess, digestible view to show that it's not just losing money, that the convention center and the bowling stadium aren't losing money, that there's actually generation of revenues from that. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, and actually, in talking with SMG, one of the things they're going to be doing is they develop the financial statements. They're going to be presenting financial statements by event, actually, too. So you'll see actual profit and loss per event. So that will be available to the board also. So yeah, we're going to be working on that for next year. We really don't have it available now, but hopefully next year we'll be able to meet your requirements.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Mr. Dillard.
Thank you, Mr. Chisholm. 2 questions, please. Going back to the financial policies under the general fund reserves, where we talk about where we are at 14% exclusive of the rainy day fund.
Yes.
If we were to include the rainy day fund, do we still meet the criteria of the 10%?
Yes. We took out that 14% is after I took out the $1 million in that calculation.
So we're still within the criteria?
We're still within criteria.
Great,
yes.
thank you. Okay, and the second question is, are there, from a policy standpoint, are there requirements or restrictions on what contingency funds can be used for?
That is up to the authority. It would be up to the board to decide what to use the contingency for. We would have to come back for you and say we're going to spend it for X or Y.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dillard. Any further questions? All right, seeing other, Mr. Chisholm, actually, I have a quick question. Will you go back to the search, your slide on the surcharge, because I don't have it in my binder specifically on the budget. Yes, thank you. So we're seeing the expenditures for the at 5.9 million for marketing, air service 1.5, 260 for marketing, sales 500 million. So we're at 9.2. Yeah. I'm confused. So we're generating. What was the carryover? What is the current balance on that in that fund?
The estimated carry forward is for the end of this year would be $5.5 million.
Okay.
Right here. I
Okay.
don't know if you can. Oops, right there. So we're carrying that forward. We anticipate this fiscal year, or next fiscal year, I should say, fiscal year 18-19, to get $5.3 million in revenue, $9.2 million expended expenses. So that's why, you got the
Roughly
carry
an
forward.
8% balance is what
Yeah,
you're
so
going
we'll end up with
carry
about
forward.
$1.6 million ending fund balance, or in that account, which is about 8%, which, is still, healthy. A couple of things to point out is the airlift and the booking incentives. Depending on when that booking incentive may take place, it may be obligated in this next fiscal year, but may not take place until that event takes place in the future year. So in a lot of ways, those numbers may not occur next fiscal year.
So we're roughly seeing about very little growth year over year in that fund. So potentially for the 19-20 budget, we may be hamstringed to not have as much a capacity for expenditures as we do coming into this next year's budget, is what we're anticipating. Because if we're only having a 1.6 carryover.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of those items potentially could be considered one time. For instance, the airlift and the sales and booking incentives and the capital. Probably the one that will continue on would be your marketing and your marketing agency fee. So
Okay.
that goes up and down.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I have. All right, I'm going to open the public hearing. Is there anybody willing to speak, wishing to speak on the budget at this time? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the board. This time, looking for a motion to approve the budget. I have a motion from Mayor Sheeby. I have a second from Mr. Murdoch. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. We're going to, everybody, and please, before you depart today, you're going to have to sign the budget, so please remember to stick around and we'll have you get that signed for you. All right. We are on to presentations. Mr. DeLone. This portion of the meeting, I'm wearing my new trusty Reno Tahoe big truck hat that I acquired at the River Fest a couple weeks ago, which is downtown. This is one of our event booth. Was amazing downtown. It was the highlight. Everybody was buying hats, and it was cool. It was a neat event, and what a neat way to market Reno Tahoe. And before Mr. DeLone gets started too, I want to highlight marketing. Somebody came up to me while I was traveling, and I had something that identified me as Reno Tahoe, and they said, "Oh yeah, I just came from LA." I said, "Oh, that's great." They said, "Oh yeah, I was in LA. I saw your guys' signs everywhere on the way to the airport. Your guys' the Reno Tahoe signs, they stand out, all the driver markets." So it was pretty impressive that, not having any kind of anticipation of driving that conversation or trying to mine that out of this individual, they offered up that, "Oh, we've seen your marketing everywhere. Reno Tahoe is everywhere in LA. We're really excited. What a cool place you live in." I'm like, "Yes, I do. Yes, I do." As the mayor would say, we live here, right? What's the saying, Madam Mayor? What's your saying? You're like, "Oh, I live where you vacation." Yeah. I live where you vacation. That's right. So anyways, with that, Mr. Lone, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think before we get into...
We no longer say we're from Tahoe.
Yeah, we're no longer from Tahoe.
I
from
think,
Reno.
We actually claim we live from Reno.
We're from Reno now.
I think before we get into the next section of the agenda today, we owe some thanks to Robert Chisel as well as Jeff Jensen and Janine Stewart, who are over here on the left, for preparing a very thorough and clear and wonderful budget. And thanks for all your hard work. Really appreciate it. We've been asked to give you some highlights of our annual plan. But as we go forward with our next fiscal year that starts on July 1, some of the big focus areas that we'll be concentrating on the next 12 months. First one is the Reno Sparks Convention Center expansion. At this time, we are still undergoing the feasibility study. That feasibility study by Johnson Consulting in Chicago, the findings will be presented to you as the RSCVA Board of Directors at our next scheduled board meeting on Thursday, June 28th. And several representatives from Johnson Consulting will be here to walk through the study, its findings, and how those conclusions have been determined. Also, we're not done with the SMG transition. Executives are here this week and next, continuing their work, but on June 18th, that will be the official start date for SMG's operations. I'm pleased to announce we've hired very talented general manager. His name is Kelly Carr. Kelly has been a SMG managerial employee since 2004. He started in California, did some time in New Mexico, and most recently has been the general manager at SMG's facilities in Syracuse, New York, where they operate a large amphitheater, a professional sports arena, as well as a convention center. He's originally from Sacramento. He is just so excited to get back out west because he's a Western guy. He spent a lot of time in Lake Tahoe, and he comes with the right mix of experience and talent that we need. Also accompanying him will be Savor Food Services general manager. You'll recall that Savor will be, which is an SMG subsidiary, will be doing all of our catering and concession work at all 4 facilities. Very talented man by the name of Dante Nicastro. Dante is a trained professional chef. He spent over 10 years as food and beverage director of several Hiltons and Millennium Hotels, which is a chain out of London, England. And most recently is the #2, the assistant general manager of food and beverage at McCormick Place in Chicago, the North America's largest convention center. So he has great experience, great education, great talent, and he too wants to move westward, and I think these 2 guys will really hit the ground running. We have budgeted for nearly an extra $1 million in spend in our consumer marketing in the current geographic markets of the Los Angeles Basin, the San Francisco Bay Area, and Seattle. And in a few moments, Jennifer Cunningham and the marketing team will give you a deep dive on some of those details. As Robert pointed out, in the budget, we have now fully funded at $1.5 million the RSCVA's Air Service Fund at $1.5 million. That's not to be confused with RASC. That is a separate funding that we contribute $250,000 to, but we're fully funded now, and obviously what will happen with those funds as air service possibilities arise, we will be now poised to fully fund and enhance those airlines to come to town. Bullet point number 5, the successful refurbishment of the Reno Sparks Convention Center, definitely in time for Interbike. On June 4th, as we've reported previously, on June 4th, we will begin fully recarpeting the entire facility with 30,000 square yards of carpet. We've just finished now the painting of the facility, making it a bright white in the ceilings and light treatments. And also within the budget, we've put $500,000 for new lighting. Lighting probably won't be ready in time for Interbike, but it is budgeted. We will put LED lighting into that exhibit hall, 382,000 feet of it, and you'll see our power expenses drop dramatically from that. Art Jimenez will later this morning give a deep dive on the further development of the Chinese market, but I can report here at the podium today that we are right on track where we should be for all of the pre-work to expect Chinese customers. And in a few weeks, we will be having a citywide training session for our general managers, directors of hotel operations, and directors of sales as to how to prepare their hotel for the Chinese visitor from the mainland. At the Reno Sparks Livestock Events Center, there's a long list of capital of improvements, but in this next year, we have budgeted $1.5 million. One of the major projects there is to redo the roof on the indoor arena, which leaks like a sieve when it rains. And then, of course, with our collaborative partnership with the City of Reno, the successful renovation of the National Bowling Stadium. The architectural plans are nearly finished. We're just tweaking those with some final adjustments. Mayor Sheevy, the city, and your staff has been so helpful in this process. I just want to commend Bill Thomas and the others. They have done a really, really good job there. And on Monday, we met with the executive director of USBC, Chad Murphy. He's really a happy camper. Yes, let's give Robert a little.
Quickly, I was curious, was the budget a little less painful working for a government agency that has money?
No, I missed.
I just had to
I missed
ask.
the workshops with the City of Reno.
Some of our strategic priorities in the coming fiscal year, visitor growth and destination awareness. I think I've already covered this in a previous slide, and Jennifer will give you all of the detail here in a few moments. But again, we will be concentrating on a deeper dive in Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Seattle. Direct room night growth. The RSCVA is charged with delivering cash room nights to our resorts and hotels and lodging. So I would like to say that our goal this year of 260,000 room nights has been met. We anticipate finishing the year right at 309,000 room nights. That's our forecast. So congratulations, Michael, to you and your team and everyone in your regional sales offices for a job well done. I'm sure your quota is going to go up. So, yeah. 400? That light, okay. Obviously, facility efficiency is a priority at all 4 of our facilities, the Reno Event Center, Reno Convention Center, Livestock Center, and Bowling Stadium. And I think the keystone here is SMG being successfully onboarded, start their operations on June 18th, and then let's let them do what they do best and report back to this body as we go along. Organizational stability, item number 4. I think this is probably, in my opinion, one of the key points. I like to say that you need to hire the best employees that are available for the best professionals for the job. And we've made a number of changes and I think improvements. And it's great to work with the folks that I get to work with every day. You do an excellent job. Part of that is to provide continuing education and development where necessary, and also important to communicate internally with all of our employees as well as externally with all of our resort partners, other governmental agencies, and professional associations and private corporations that we do business with on a daily basis. You got to keep up on technology, and we are doing that. And also, I think it's very key with the RSCVA to promote a safe and enjoyable and engaged working environment. We want our employees to come to work with a smile on their face, be proud of their agency, be proud of their colleagues and fellow workers, and that is just paramount for a healthy environment. And at the same time, get things done. So with that, I will introduce now Jennifer Cunningham, who will discuss some of the marketing topics. JC?
Thank you. Thank you. So I have a cute story to share too after hearing Bob's. I was in Austin a couple weeks ago at this really cool speakeasy, quiet little place that you have to have a reservation for, and all the cool kids are there. Literally, they're in their 20s. And I met a group of 20-year-olds, and when one of the guys was saying, we were talking where we were from, and when I said Reno, Tahoe, he said, "Oh my God, I was just in Seattle, and you are all over the place in Seattle. I love those billboards." And then he said, "You must design the billboards specifically for the market they're in, because the ones in Seattle were exactly right for the audience there." I mean, I couldn't have paid to get a better endorsement than that. It was so cool. It makes me very proud. Okay, let's move forward. Whoop.
Do you want me to be your slide operator?
Well, I'm having a hard time.
Here, let me do this for you.
Okay, there we go. Strategic priority number 1. With marketing, visitor growth and destination awareness is our main effort that we accomplished in the marketing department. We have 5 goals. Right under destination perception and awareness, one of the most effective things that we're doing right now involves the use of the key media influencers who we bring into the destination so they can experience it firsthand and then write about it. We then utilize their stories for web content, to get it out on social media, and to talk to like kinds. And then these influencers have hundreds and hundreds of thousands, if not million followers, and they go out and spread the word through their social outlets. As Phil had indicated, we will continue marketing in the Bay Area, the LA Basin, and the Seattle markets, and we're using that additional $800,000 to increase frequency in that market. We don't have enough money yet to open a new market, and there is the ability to be a little more, to do a little more penetration in the markets that we're currently in. Our VO, visitor origination analysis, is coming in, and Howard has been extremely busy crunching the numbers. The initial results look really good, and I'm hoping that right now Howard is just verifying all of the data that we receive from the hotels. We plan to present this hopefully at the next board meeting. So we'll share the increase in visitors in these markets for you guys. Last of all, in this goal is conducting a visitor profile study. The last time we did that was 2015, and we paused that because we had not seen a tremendous groundbreaking change in our visitor demographics, and we didn't want to continue to just repeat it for the sake of repeating it. We think the time for 2019 is right, and we expect to see different demographics. Probably most will be a shift in the visitor age. Our second goal, destination engagement. This includes further personalization of our website, and we're also doing much more video production to curate content for our website, for our social media, and also to develop videos, which we're doing right now to stimulate attendance at upcoming conventions. So Phil and our team is working on one, very personal one, to send out to all the Safari Club people to say, hey, this is the new things that is happening in Reno. And we're creating that in-house, so it's at a really reasonable price. Next, target market growth. Of course, just to sort of reiterate, the additional money that was just approved to go into the target market, this brings our overall media budget to $6.8 million. And let me remind you, in fiscal year 15-16, it was under $1 million. So we've come a long ways. Next goal is supporting the direct room growth. Much of our efforts, as you can imagine, is spent supporting Mike and Art in all of their efforts. In the next fiscal year, also, we'll have a concentrated effort in supporting SMG and the facilities, and kind of letting the greater world know that SMG is managing our facilities, and we plan to leverage their relationships to get Mike some more leads. And then finally, air service support. we've been continuing to work very closely with the airport. We've got a trip to Minneapolis, I want to say it's next week that we're participating in, and then a trip in a few weeks back to Atlanta, and it's an ongoing process, and we're ready to pull that trigger the minute we get an airline to express interest. So we're working so well with the airport, as you guys know. So next slide. Just a quick recap, visitor volume. These are the results that we're driving. Current fiscal year, we're expecting, it doesn't break it out, but current fiscal year, we're expecting an increase in visitor volume of about 3.7%. Next year, it says approximately 3%, and when you look at the numbers, it's 3.4%. So if we pull those two together and we reflect over 2 years of activity and growth, that's a 7.3% increase in visitor volume that we're hoping to achieve. And I'm excited that starting this next fiscal year, because of the website, we'll have 1 year under our belt, and we have a benchmark. So going forward, we'll really be able to measure all of the web impressions from those target markets. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike, who kind of runs with the strategic plan number 2.
Thank you, Jennifer. Would you like to be my? Sure, thank you. You're doing such a good job. I didn't want to pass it along, so thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. So, right. For convention sales, we, in 2018-19 fiscal year, we have 7 primary goals. First and foremost, obviously, is for the team to achieve 280,000 net group room nights. In terms of what that represents per salesperson on the team in our regional offices and the 3 that we have based here in Reno, it equates to about just north of 23,000 room nights per individual. In order to achieve the 280,000 net room nights, we have to have a running 12-month average of 823,000 room nights in the pipeline or funnel. In order to achieve the 280, it's based on an industry conversion average of 34%. So we constantly have to have, over the course of the fiscal year, month to month, quarter to quarter, and obviously for all 12 months, 823,000 room nights or more constantly coming through in terms of lead generation in order to hit the 280 based on the industry average conversion. In order to achieve this room night goal, we obviously need to leverage and maximize our regional offices and vertical market focus. We made some changes in terms of obviously staff in the prior fiscal year, and as we move into 18-19, we have allocated a specific individual to the vertical market of Smurf, which we have never done in the past. We feel this individual, based on their experience, resources, knowledge, is going to do very well in that specific segment. A new initiative is we're developing a unique and creative, personal, and industry-recognized site experience program for first-time visitors. This concept is to bring people that have never been to the destination, literally be in our market for 24 hours to really experience what is happening in our city in terms of a transition. We're really focusing on the local aspect, the microbrews, the art, the Midtown area, and it's a program then that will have recognition within the industry. By the time Jennifer and his team help us brand it and create some brand equity in the name, we put together a committee. We've allocated an individual to 50% of their responsibilities to be a site experience manager, which helps us in terms of having someone in market that is constantly holding the hand of the planner and decision maker from start to finish from the entire time they are in our destination. We also need to really focus on communication in order to be successful. We need to utilize all media channels to educate our end users and meeting planners about our financial value, our outdoor recreation, our cultural experience, and probably most importantly, our flexible business terms. Next slide, please, Mr. DeLone. Now I'd like to move to the results we are delivering for fiscal year 18-19. Our target for group leads is 668. This is a slight decrease from the fiscal year 17 estimate of our target at 737. And the reason for that is our focus is to really pursue and spend more time on converting quality leads that represent larger room blocks. Our convention produced room nights goal is 2,291, which is again is slightly down to the 17-18 estimates. That is predominantly to obviously the booking of Interbike, which we were in our process and procedures, we were able to take credit for 3 consecutive years of a multi-year program. Interbike is obviously 5 years with a rolling 5, so there's 63,000 room nights that we're taking credit for in fiscal year 17-18. The sports segment for 18-19 target is 75,709, which is an increase over prior year target of 60,453. Why we are increasing that number, we're really focusing on Tier 2 and Tier 3 sports. We obviously do very well, and the team is very successful in the volleyballs and softballs and business that's been coming to our destination for years. We have pushed the team to really focus on sports business that is, one, meeting on the shoulder seasons to support our hotels where occupancy is not as rich in the summer of July, August, and September, and focusing more on midweek. Some of those examples are karate, judo, taekwondo, archery, fencing, etc. As it relates to the Reno Livestock Event Center, the group number target for 18-19 is 17,861. This is a slight increase over the prior year of 17,341. Groups that are represented by these room night numbers are primarily not sourced by the RSCVA or the RSCVA sales team, but we wanted to make sure that we were expressing the number of group room nights that are truly using those facilities. We have asked the partnership hotels to give us validation so we know what those group nights represent, and we're in the process of doing that now. But then again, these are not room nights that are being credited to the RSCVA or the RSCVA sales team, but room nights that are truly being generated from a group perspective in that facility. The total produced group night target for fiscal year 18-19 is 280,000. The fiscal year 17-8 room night estimate, which consists of 10 months of actual produced room nights and 2 months of forecast, to echo Mr. DeLone's comments, is 309,425. This number, again, I want to reiterate, reflects 3 years of Interbike at 63,000 room nights or 21,000 per year. Before I turn over the mic to Mr. Jimenez on an update on tourism, I just wanted to give a little note and an appreciation that Art and myself and the tourism team just participated in IPW, International Powwow. This is the largest international buyer, U.S. supplier trade show in the United States. I've been participating both as a representative of Reno and of another city down south for numerous years, and I can tell you, just to be quite frank, that our destination has struggled in securing one-on-one appointments with international buyers. Jennifer and I were literally commenting on this yesterday. We remember the days of we were shooting for 15, maybe we get 17. If we had a really good year, we got 20. When 2017 in Washington, D.C. last year, Art and his team were able to secure 64 appointments, which was, as we talked about, was an all-time record. And I'm happy to share that this year, over the 3 days, in our partnership with Travel Nevada, and the area that we consumed displayed extremely well, on par with Las Vegas, Visit California, Orlando. We conducted 84 appointments, of which 30 were all with mainland China accounts. We brought John Zhu, who is our representative out of Shanghai, works for PHG. We flew him over. The guy knew every single Chinese operator on the entire floor. So I just want to recognize Art and his team, and kudos to the development they've done in the tourism department over a year.
Super. Thank you, Mike. Thank you very much. I'm a little tired. I got home late last night from Denver from the trade show, so sorry, Mike. There you go. There you go. So we have 6 goals for next year's fiscal year in tourism sales, and the first goal is traditional wholesalers, and we're going to continue to develop marketing and booking incentives targeting our extended booking windows. Travelers that book through a wholesaler tend to book further out, so of course we want that for the destination, and we're going to be working with these partners on those initiatives. We also want to cultivate and nurture business development managers in our key nonstop markets, because these BDMs, business development managers, know what agencies are selling what travel. So we want to focus on those as well. On the receptive operator side, for both domestic and international, we want to develop the programs and itineraries so that they can provide the right itinerary for tour operators and OTAs, and want to continue to build destination awareness in China via online, social media, FAMs, and again, developing the right itinerary for those travelers. A little sidebar, a lot of Chinese tour groups that have been coming to the United States get shafted when they get here. They may land in San Francisco or LA, and they buy into a tour, and they'll say, want to go to Yellowstone, $99, includes 2 nights. Well, as they come across the country, they get to Yellowstone, and the tour operators say, oh, you actually want to go into Yellowstone, that's another $200. And this is true. If they don't pay the money, they leave them on the side of the road at the rest area, so they go, and they come back 8 hours later. So one of the things that we want to build are good tours. And you can hear, and these are horror stories that are all over the travel trade. We want to build good itineraries so they can talk good about us when they go back to China, okay? So itineraries is going to be a key objective for us. OTA, online travel agencies, we developed some successful joint marketing campaigns with a rather large OTA for our destination. We're going to continue working with them to fill need periods, and our need periods being October through March. And we're also going to promote our nonstop markets within the OTA market segment. So we want to message with our marketing assets that we're nonstop flights, nonstop fun, nonstop value. It'll be a big focus for us next year. Phil? On the travel agent side, we want to mine our proprietary data that we have with TravelClick and the Airline Reporting Corporation, where we actually know what agencies from any point in the world, if they're booking air or rooms into our destination via the Global Distribution System or the GDS system. Again, we're going to promote nonstop service to those agencies, and we're going to develop a really, really good corporate to leisure conversion strategy. We see that our corporate travelers are traveling and staying at our flag properties, so the Courtyards, the Hampton Inns, and those are predominantly corporate travelers. So we want to intercept that visit and have their travel agent recommend us for a return trip for a vacation with their families. Group tour, again, itinerary is going to be a key focus for the tour guides. We had a large tour operator from China, Galaxy Travel, that was here about 6 weeks ago, and they were here with 4 of their tour guides, actually going through step by step where they were going to take their group, because they wanted to make sure that they were hitting the key spots. And we're also going to be focusing on the West Coast receptive tour operators from China. Consumer and ski, there's only so much we can do in this space. One of it, ski is a function of weather. Golf, we've been going to consumer golf shows, and there's not so much that we can do as far as impact in those areas. So we're going to restructure our resources so that we can do the other 5 goals a little bit better. As far as numbers, first I'd like to point out a few items. I'm sure that you're going to notice these numbers aren't completely filled up, and I'll explain why. Fiscal year 19 target of 699,884 is less than our estimate actual of 736. And the reason being is that next year's target goal was based on last year's strategic plan. And second, these numbers are submitted by our hotel partners. So we're going to have higher numbers in this fiscal than the goal, and that's because we have 8 properties reporting last year, and this year we have 11. So naturally, we're going to have higher numbers. Additionally, we did not use TravelClick's travel agent numbers last fiscal, which we are this year. So it's not to say that the destination is experiencing higher growth, but we're reporting better numbers. So what's going to happen is, since we have these 2 enhanced data sets, once we get the final numbers for this fiscal, we're going to reforecast our target for next year. So in a different sense, if these numbers were totaled up, we would show a big decrease for next year, which is not going to be the case. So once we get the final numbers, we'll reforecast that and report at a later date. Okay? Would you want to sort?
All right.
Was there anything else to add, Bert? Finish?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Mr. Caroselli?
Oh, I'm sorry. Can I ask a question? This is for Mike. Can you walk us through how you came up with your projected room night numbers and your sales production goals? Just kind of what was the formula you used and how you arrived saying we're going to be up, down?
Sure, Mr. Caroselli. So if I understand the question correctly, you're asking how I came up with the forecast of 309,000 for this fiscal?
Well, how you came up with it, the components of the different regions or whatever, but how would you come up with a regional number for fiscal 18, 19, 19, 20?
Right,
that you have here in your report? Just as
sure.
What formula did you use, or did you pick a number of anticipated growth, or it doesn't explain it here, just so maybe you can explain it to me.
You bet, you bet. So there's several factors that go into determining the annual goal, right? First, it's tied to the strategic plan, which requests us to have about a 7% growth per year. So the goal of 16-17 was X, 17-18 was 260, 18-19 280, the forecasted goal for the next year after we're north of 300,000. In terms of how we determine the numbers by region, that's a combination of factors, right? We look at production, past production, lead volume. We look at potential and development based on new regions that we've created. You know, as you know, we have opened 4 offices within the last 6 months. We did not have an existing person in Northern California, Atlanta, Chicago, or Las Vegas. Las Vegas is a unique from the standpoint they're focusing on trade shows and citywides and larger programs that even book further into the future. So the immediate results of that position are not where we anticipate them being now, but we anticipate those obviously being there in the future because they're booking 4, 5, 6 years out, like an Interbike or Safari Club. I'd be happy to share with you the individual goals that we've established by territory. Oh, within the plan itself, I'm sorry. Yeah, and I'm happy to provide you more details on those. But it really it goes into what we think we can generate based on the history, the potential, the growth opportunity within those territories.
I think I should add something, Nat, on that subject. Michael said, okay, his goal this coming fiscal year is 280, and his goal this past year was 260, or in the year we're now is 260. Those numbers this team inherited, that this was all established within the strategic long-range plan long before we even became relevant and served the RSCVA. So we're just taking an inherited, predetermined number and running with it.
Well, the reason I'm asking, because I work very, very closely with our sales department, but a couple of things stuck out to me. For example, in the Northern California, Nevada position, we're showing a decrease in fiscal 18-19 from fiscal 17-18, and that's our biggest feeder market.
Right.
And then we're showing an increase of 6,000 up to back. We'll go from 16-9 to 12-4 in 18-19, and up to 18. And 18-19 we go to 18,000. And the reason I mention that is because we're a single property, and our property goals for Northern California are almost twice what your projections are for 18-19, and much higher than they are in 19-20. And then when you speak of the southeast region, you go from basically 15 to 15.5 to 18. And again, our projected sales from that region, just as a single property, are higher than your projections for the whole area.
Right.
And they've consistently been that way. So it kind of, I raise the question is that it seems maybe we should have higher projections or higher expectations. And that's what triggered me to think of in this.
Sure. So to specifically speak on Northern California, first of all, so we established that market. We brought on a staff member. We had a change in staff within that market. We had to go out. The position was vacated. We took the person in the northwest. We took the person in the southwest, and they basically were responsible during that void period to mine that market and work that market, which is very difficult, not having boots in the ground. So for that time period where the position was vacant, we were really doing everything we could to generate production, but we did not have specifically boots on the ground in Sacramento. We brought on an individual starting on March 5th. So there's obviously, as you know, in this business, there's a ramp-up period. So in determining the goals, we felt that that number that we allocated for Northern California was adequate based on the longevity and the time period that person has been on staff. As it relates to the Southeast, again, that's a relatively new position. Your property, I'm sure, does extremely well. You have a representative that spends a lot of time in the Southeast that's based in D.C. Maybe that's something other properties should look at, and that's kudos to you for doing so well. The other reason why we didn't want to elevate that number is because we're a little bit restricted on airlift out of the Southeast, as you know. So.
Then I have another question too, which came up during my meetings with our salespeople. On the trade show side, you're showing flat 6,900 roughly room nights for this year that we're finishing up in the next 2 years. And it's our experience that when we get a trade show on property,
Right.
that historically it generates between 3,000 and 4,000 room nights. So what we're saying basically here, then we're going to have 2 trade shows, roughly, or 2 or 3, that are going to generate 7,000 room nights.
Agree. So that individual.
That
and
seems like a low expectation.
I definitely can see how you could interpret that way. So again, having someone focus specifically on the trade show segment, and what you may define as a trade show as a hotelier versus what we define as a trade show is more as a citywide. So we're fishing 4, 5, 6 years into the future. We could easily put a 20 or 30,000 room night goal in there. It wouldn't be achieved over the time period of the fiscal year. It's something that is really booking 5, 6, 7 years into the future. The other side is half that person's goal is based on conversion of leads based on relationships that they have achieved over their 30-year career. So they're tasked with not only working with the Emerald Expositions, the Informas, the Reeds, and the large trade show producers and owners, but also because of their relationships and history in this industry of generating, opening doors to all of our other regional offices.
No, and I think our projections are very important, because that's the basis for the revenues for the RSA, 71%, but it's also the basis or the benchmark for your goals, for your bonuses and so forth and so on. So it's a very important number, and I think, I understand your explanation, and I'm not saying you're right or wrong. I'm just saying we should have very high expectations of the people that we've hired, and apparently you hire the right people, there's no question, and we're paying them well. So their production should be better than we've had in the past, I would think. So that's all I'm trying to say. I think we're spending a lot of extra money. We should expect a lot more in return from the standpoint of production. That's all.
Sure, agree.
All right. Any further questions? All right. Mr. Dillon.
I have to work my own finance. That's you.
Next item is facilities. A lot of what you're going to be seeing with facilities is being driven by the SMG transition. We are looking at efficiency and quality as we look at our facilities. So we're transitioning on June 17th to SMG. We want to achieve the targeted facility operating margins within the approved budget that you just approved. We would like to actually improve that as SMG gets their feet up and running and as we go into the future years. Capital projects continue to improve our facilities. Thanks to you approving the capital budget for next year, we're going to take on some much needed improvements in a lot of our facilities, particularly in the Livestock Event Center and the Convention Center. Next, long-term facility management, we've talked about SMG, and they're also going to drive the client and customer experience. They're a professional management group. They are going to bring in best practices, and we're already starting to see some of that coming as they work with us and we work with them. Very impressed with them and what they're bringing to the table. And we are hoping for a smooth transition as we go forward. Much like we did with Wildcreek, we're looking at a smooth transition with SMG, and they seem to be bringing on a very quality team in their general manager and their food and beverage. Next is just our margins for the 4 properties, and of course Wildcreek, it's an easy one as we sell the property hopefully next year and transition out of the golf business.
I think we've covered the culture and sustainability goals and segment previously from the podium, but again, we have a culture of professionalism, transparency and honesty within our workforce. We also do employee recognition. We meet with our employees on a regular basis through quarterly all-employee, or what you might call a town hall meeting, as well as smaller roundtables throughout the year of 8 to 10 employees to kind of gauge how they feel about the RSCVA and our direction. And oftentimes they have good ideas that they develop for us. Board governance and policy development. We are updating the policies. We also will engage in board orientation for new board members as they come along so that they can hit the ground running and are up to speed on what it means to serve on the RSCVA board. And obviously, community relations are good. We touched upon this in the past, having good dialogue with all of our public agencies and private sector. Of course, our number one effort there over the next few months is engagement on the Reno Sparks Convention Center possible expansion. That's the end of the presentation, sir.
Thank you, Mr. DeLone. You know, is there any questions, comments right now? Mr. Dillard.
First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for the presentation. Very, very well done. My question is for Jennifer. And you mentioned on the marketing side that our plan is to maintain the 3 markets which we've currently been working in, partially because of the success, I guess also partially because of not having enough money, as you said, to take on the new market. So my question to you is, what triggers us taking on a new market while trying to sustain the success of some of these 3?
First off, in our strategic plan, we've identified 2019-20 as the year that we are really going to look at it. It's about $1 million. And it's not just the money, though. It's working with the airport to see where the lift is and where we can really enhance what is currently coming to Reno. And a lot of it also is Howard's work with the visitor origination analysis. And if we can see from the hotel properties, some markets, Phoenix always comes up high in terms of air service, but what we're finding out is that they are going through Reno to north. However, with the visitor origination analysis, if we see a continued increase in visitation from Phoenix, for example, that may be a right market for us to go into. So it's a lot of factors, and we don't do it in a vacuum. We certainly engaged a lot of the properties in the airport and on strategy.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Any further questions? I'd like to make a quick point. I think that it was June 23rd, 2016, when this board, or 4 members of this board, Mayor Sheevy, Councilman Lawson, Mr. Caroselli, and myself, finalized the strategic plan with Jennifer Cunningham. Nobody else in this room was participating in that meeting. And in the last 3 years, this board and this organization has changed dramatically, and for the better. I mean, we have seen dramatic, and it's not just because of the work that we've done here, but this board took advantage of, and this organization took advantage of a rising tide. And, Glenn Carano sat here years ago and said, with the rising tide, all boats float. And we are now experiencing that. We took advantage of it, and we caught the wave, and we got everything positioned in the right place. And it was through the work of the 4 individuals and the continued support of the new board members that have helped the strategic plan really drive this forward. But to Mr. Caroselli's point, I think we need, now that we've seen some of these things, we need to start reevaluating. We've looked at the strategic plan, we put some things in place, we've driven the marketing home, we've got a wonderful marketing. I mean, obviously through the organic stories that Jennifer and I have experienced, and I know all of you have by traveling throughout and seeing the marketing. The marketing's working well. The addition of Mr. Jimenez and Mr. Larragueta to sales and tourism, we've seen dramatic increases. So we're going in the right direction as an organization and as a board. However, we still can do more. We still need to continue to grow and continue to elevate our standing, not only within the region and within our property and our purveyors, but continuously to elevate ourselves throughout the country and throughout the world. And I think we're doing that with obviously our expansion into China. But I would urge, as chairman of the board, that our board members continue to get involved. There was budgeted $10,000 for next year's budget for travel for this board to go and participate in sales meetings. Mr. Murdoch is going to participate in Minneapolis coming up in regards to helping procure air service and helping continue to grow the convention space. Mayor Sheevy was instrumental in making sure that Lime Bike was in place by the time Interbike lands, and has been instrumental in helping us get Interbike to the area by traveling to meet with those individuals. So I would encourage this board not to continue to just put it onto the staff, but really for the 9 members of this board, because we all have something to gain. Your properties, our entities, our cities, and it's important for us to continue. And it takes our leadership and it takes our expertise. Each one of you sit as the pinnacle and within your regarded industry to understand what's going on within the market. And it helps. It helps when we show up at meetings. It helps when we show up at sales trips to help these individuals sell and help tout what our city is and where we are and who we and what we support and when we benefit from. We've spent money on revitalizing the city of Sparks and the signs in the city of Sparks. We've revitalized the city of Reno's signs. We've done, and so with that being said, what I would also urge and what I would ask this board and what I'm going to ask for a board item is that all the entities locally, the county, the city of Sparks, city of Reno, all have a state of the city or county address. I would propose that this board get together in conjunction with staff and post a state of tourism in northern Nevada and work in conjunction with all the properties in the region and with the staff, and really highlight where we have come from in the last 3 years and where we're going and where we want to take the initiatives of this board and basically where we want to drive our strategic plan, and have it be in conjunction with our strategic plan, looking forward to what we're looking towards in the next 10 years and what we've accomplished and what we're looking to re-elevate. So with that being said, I mean, Mr. Murdoch with the row, with the expansion, the new naming of the properties downtown, and the focus that Mr. Dillard and Mr. Murdoch and your respective corporations have focused on downtown Reno, the BID, the formation of the Business Improvement District in the downtown Reno to address homelessness and some of the issues that are happening in our downtown area that affect multiple parts of our properties. The site experience that we've offered here at the convention center that benefits all of our properties, especially those Peppermill and the Atlantis that benefit from that. The continued events that we want to focus on that'll help all of our region in regards to Incline Village and Sparks, and those are the things that we really need to focus on, and we need to highlight those so that not just when we go to fam trips and try to sell the region, but we're selling what we're doing here as a board and as an organization to our community, so that we continue to get buy-in from our community and show everybody around us what we have done, because it is a huge, we don't sit here and just pat each other on the back just to sit. We have actually accomplished everything we've set out to do in our strategic plan. And we need to now revamp that as a new board and find what those new initiatives look like. And I think something of the state of where we're going and where we're going to look like going forward. So I would challenge the board to help me in organizing something like that, and challenge every member of this board to participate in, like I said, as once again, fam trips, continue to go to sales and trips, and making sure that we can continue to help elevate the area, because that is what our single focus here is, to, as Mr. Caracelli tells me, heads in beds, right, sir? Right. Heads in beds. So, with that being said, is there any more discussion or anything anybody else would like to add this time? Mr. Murdoch. Turn your mic.
One point is, and Nat, thank God you're on the Air Service Committee at the RSCVA. It's good to have a dual. He has a dual purpose. He's here and he also runs the air service. And again, you're only as good as your last flight in here. And it's almost like I think we've done a lot of things that have helped enhance the budgets. Thank God for the RSCVA coming in with that tax and doing what they did. Again, we still need to do more in air service. If for instance, if the study does come back that the convention center is viable, you're going to need air service to support that. So there's a lot of key factors here. So I think it really, I guess my message would be make sure you stay very close, and you got Nat there on the board. Thank God we got to work with that airport. And there's still a lot of things going on. You know, I sit on the EDON board, and there's a new company who wants to come in and fly 30 corporate seats in here, and which really fits this. I think RSCVA needs to know these things because it drives corporate travel, convention seats. It's all part of the whole equation. So things like that are very important. I'm just an air advocate, and I think it's so important because if you don't have that airport humming, we are all in a little bit of trouble because that's how the big conventions, that's how your corporations get here. So, thank you.
Well, I'll kind of piggyback those comments as far as looking at what the airport's facing right now, right? With some of the changes to the accessibility with the on-ramps and off-ramps. So I think if we really are going to be serious about supporting the air service coming in, we also have to understand that the one thing that we appreciate about the airport and that visitors appreciate about our airport is the accessibility. So we may have to be ready to join them in whatever efforts they have with securing those on and off ramps with the NDOT that's coming up. Just something to look forward to.
All right, at this time, so we've kind of, today what we've done is combined in the agenda items E1 and F1 together. E1 was the staff update, and we've kind of gonna go over in the scorecard and done some things, but they're not, E1 is not an action item and is just an information item only. If there are any specific questions about E1 that weren't covered for you in the scorecard that you want to kind of go over, this would be the time to cover those. But we kind of felt like those were covered jointly with the annual plan. So are there any specific questions over the scorecard that anybody would like to cover? Or any statements I'd like to be making, Ms. Cunningham?
Oh, I think Art has a comment on this fun slide.
So as Mr. Dole mentioned earlier, I would go into a little bit more info real quick on China.
Okay.
And I'd like to kind of go back to what Mike brought up on IPW, because we're already planning next year's IPW, and we just got back last night. It really is an important trade show. Again, as John mentioned, John Zhu came in from Shanghai. John Zhu is on an airplane right now with 4 top customers from mainland China that have taken additional time to come to our destination. And we're going to show them a real good time through the weekend. And that's good for planning for next year. But when we were at Powwow, we conducted 2 client development events. This was Saturday night. We were at Kendra Scott Jewelry Store in Cherry Creek, which is a real high-end shopping center. And we brought in about 20 customers. You can see here they are. They're all Chinese. I'm very, very impressed. Rather than taking them out to dinner, we let them have a piece of jewelry to their liking within the store. And one fellow, costume jewelry, yes, yes, yes.
Wait.
The piece of jewelry was
I didn't
cheaper.
see that in the budget.
The piece of jewelry was less than taking him out to dinner that night. Okay, we were competing with about 15 destinations on this particular night. One of the fellas, so it's 13 hours difference in China, woke up his wife, and we chatted with her, and he looked at every piece of jewelry that she wanted to pick. Okay, so great event. We had another event on Tuesday night with these operators. But just real quickly, a couple of things that we're doing with PHG. Next month, we'll begin working on building out the website in China so that it's functional in China. We're going to be building out our Weibo and WeChat, so it's all tied in to that platform. PHG is conducting one-on-one sales calls as we speak in China. They probably conducted over 50 in the last couple of months. We have a FAM coming in today. We have 2 more coming this fall. We have a PR FAM coming in June, and that's going to be, Ben's going to head that up. The journalists that are coming in that FAM are with Travel and Leisure, Voyage, National Geographic, and Rob Report. And Rob Report is a luxury lifestyle publication. I could go on and on and on. So we're busy.
Well, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Kurosawa.
I just want to let everybody know, I wasn't trying to be critical of the sales staff when I made my comments, but I think, we've got a hell of a new team here now. We've got to rev up our engine. We've got to operate on 12 cylinders, not 4. If we're going to get where we expect to go, we better be operating at 1,000%. And if we don't operate at 1,000%, we're never going to reach what we hope to reach, and that's a fact.
Mr. Kurosawa, I didn't think your comments were critical at all. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think that we've achieved so much that we overshot really where we set our goals from, because not knowing what we were looking at when we wrote the strategic plan 2 years ago. I mean, and we did the best we could at the time, and with the four members that were here, we analyzed it as the best. But you have exceeded our expectations, and I think now is the time that we need to come back and reevaluate and really look at what those sales goals look like. And because the region is growing, we're seeing things change. Major corporations are moving to the area, as Mr. Murdoch pointed out. Blockchain's just acquired the last 67,000 acres at for $170 million. Major things are changing in our region, and it's not just corporations. It's not just, I mean, you know, Mayor Sheevy was at the flirty discussion that the Department of Transportation and FAA made that announcement. The region is growing, and we need to be prepared for that. And they're coming whether we're ready or not. So I think, to Mr. Caraselli's point, we need to go and reevaluate at what we're doing as an organization and make sure that we're hitting those goals right and properly, and that we're properly, because if we're not, we're dragging our feet. And so it's not to be critical, it's not to be pejorative, it's just to make sure that we understand that this is where we're going, is that we need to be in run mode, not walk. I think you guys are doing it and are quite capable of facilitating that. We just need to make sure that we're all on the same page. And many of us weren't here when we wrote the strategic plan. So now it's time to reevaluate and make sure that it fits this board and how we go forward, and really what the needs are of the new community, not what we were 2 years ago, because 2 years ago it was a massive change. So with nothing else, being no other comments, anybody else at this time? Looking for a motion for a discussion on the annual plan proposed in F1.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve. I have a motion. I have a second by Mayor Sheevy. Motion from Mr. Murdoch, second from Mayor Sheevy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, we are on to item H, board member comments regarding future items for future meetings. Are there any items? Mr. Dillard.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to, if possible, request a 2018-19 annual plan from SMG, similar to what we saw here. It'd be nice to see what our management company has in store for next year for those facilities.
I think it'd be perfect. An SMG 2018-2019 plan.
Yeah, I think we could,
Perfect.
won't happen in the next 2 weeks, but once we get them on the ground, absolutely. And they're fully prepared to do that.
Great.
Are we still doing
Is that
subcommittees?
accept,
Mayor,
Mr.
yes,
Dillard, is that acceptable?
I haven't seen any.
Got to get them in the,
I don't think we've had
I
any.
was just curious if there was any thoughts on, are we going to participate in Pride? We really should be participating in Pride, and even looking at the San Francisco Pride Market.
We did not budget to participate in it, but if it's, we'll look at it.
Yeah.
But one thing that we have budgeted for is trying to identify some key influencers, and we think that might be a really unique and strategic way to address,
Yeah.
in a much more authentic way, that audience. So
And I think
it
we
is in
can
our
do it
budget.
really affordable, certainly in this market, but I mean, the San Francisco
It's-
market is
Yeah.
unbelievable, and that really is our market. But one thing I do want to point out, and I'm really excited to see this,
Yeah.
super smart. So, so this is really cool because I don't know how many of you are on social media, but that poor whale took a beating, literally. And people were saying, I can't believe you would spend money on investing in the arts. And arts really are a huge economic impact, and they're a very big driver. And they certainly, you know, I believe they are the way to package a city. So today, we have a major production company here doing a big documentary, and they're staying at the Whitney Peak, and they saw the whale on Instagram and came to me and said, we want to donate about $1 million in other arts, and then today we're going to be talking about them donating another $1 million in arts. So that was all off of Instagram, and this whale here, for those of you that don't know about part of this whale, this is, you know, obviously stained glass, and part of it was designed by Android Jones, and he also, his work is seen at the Vatican. So Reno and the Vatican have something in common, and that's art. But anyway, so it's kind of exciting. It's a big production company in town, and they've been all over Reno the last few days, and they were like, this is one of the best destinations we've ever been in. So I'm really proud, but I think it speaks volumes to why art is important.
I think that, you know, and I want to bring out, I think what Mayor Sheevy, one of the things Mayor Sheevy brought up, I think is important, is that we probably need to reconvene the marketing and have the marketing subcommittee have a look at the next year's marketing. I know personnel is going to meet, which is Mr. Wowo, Mr. Caraselli, Mr. Murdoch, and Mr. Wood, that are going to be comprised of that board to discuss some of the personnel goals. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Lawson. Sorry, I apologize, Mr. Lawson.
I know, the S is silent.
I'm trying to go off of what I remember from the email. But I think we need to recombine the subcommittees and have some discussions in regards to the marketing, potentially facilities, get the facilities group together again, and also personnel to discuss kind of the future plans in extent, so that we can bring those back to the board for future, for any kind of future needs within the next Q1, Q2 the next year. Mr. Lawson.
So the signs, the Spark signs started going in yesterday. They'll be hopefully fully installed by tomorrow. And you'll be able to see the one at the marina from the freeway. So it looks pretty cool. Only thing I'm a little worried about is the green sign with the green grass behind it, but we'll get past that. The good news is,
Kill the grass.
yeah, we'll put in more beach. The good news is we have 3 nationally televised water functions there in June and early July, so we'll get some good publicity off of that. And then the other sign is going out at the Golden Eagle Recreation Park on the championship field, where they do the final games for the softball tournaments that are also nationally televised. So good exposure for Sparks, and thank you to the RSCVA for stepping up and paying for those.
All right, any further? We're going to open public comment. Is there any public comment, and anybody who would like to speak at this time? Seeing no public comment, bring it back to the board. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.